Okay, so we are on part 5, and here's the cap. So I told you I was going to put it through the sewing machine, which is exactly what I did. I sewed a pretty hefty 1/2 inch seam here. The strip itself is 2 inches wide. And what I'm doing here is I have ironed this flat, so so that this lays inside, okay? And then I'm folding it over to where my seams match, and I am pinning. Now, you don't have to pin if you don't want, but I ironed it, and I really like the neatness of how it lays against my head if I pin it before I sew it down. It also helps me to make sure that I have as few ripples or wrinkles in it. If you have wrinkles or ripples in your cap on the band, when it lays up against your face, it can cause, or could potentially cause, headaches. I've never really had a problem with that, but I'm also pretty careful to make sure that, okay, so you can see it's got a little bit of a ripple here. It's more towards the back, so I'm not going to worry about it, but I don't want it rippling up top on my forehead because I don't want to get myself a headache. So what I do is I just adjust it a little bit as I go down so that it's a fitting part. It's part of just how you adjust it. If you look, I've got a little bit more, I have these stains on here, which is why I'm going to embroider over the top of this. So if you fold this over just like this, this is at the top of the head, so you want to make sure to place it, I should clarify. Okay, so if you look here, this is the stitching right here. This is the stitching of how the band is attached to the cap. What I've done is I've ironed it so that this fold, this raw edge is folded under, and it's laid right up against that stitching. And I'll show you in a minute how I'm gonna put that on there, but I just want to show you that. So this is a little bit of an extra ripple. I'm going to have to ease that down. Part of it is because I didn't evenly iron this, so it actually needs to be folded over a little bit more. But this is a perfect example of a common error or easily made frustrating error. Don't get frustrated, just know that it happens to everybody, including me, who's been sewing these things for a while. And I just ease it in. Starting to shake a little bit. I probably should eat something here soon. So part of that ripple is the fabric size of my fold over. So I'm just easing it in. It's an easy fix. It's not something that you should be mad or feel like you cut the fabric wrong or anything like that. And those Air Force jets are over top again. I hope that doesn't come through on the video. You know, I'm going to go back and watch all of these and listen to all of the neighbors fighting and the jets going over top. Oh, hey, Andrea. Yeah, part 1 through 4 is already posted if you want to watch them. I'm just doing this part now. Okay, so this little ripple here is a fold issue with the fabric. Okay, so I'm just going to ease my fabric a little bit wider because I know that that's what's causing the problem. You ease it and press it with your fingers, and then just place it in. And this ease needs a bit widening too. There we go. Okay, easing and widening. You know, one of the reasons I'm doing these videos is I've watched a lot of videos on different methods of garment construction, and I find that there's very few garment construction videos out there for historical reenactors for period garments. There just isn't. And there's a couple blogs where people take pictures, and the pictures are extremely valuable to me because I'm a hands-on learner and I've got to see the image to know what it is that's going on. And I have to do it to learn. And so looking at pictures is very helpful, but I really find that watching someone do a whole process is the most valuable learning tool for me. Okay, so we have a little bit of a fold over here problem, and I'm just going to ease that in. You can see it's got a little bit more of a bump, but I'm going to ease it in. When I sew this together, you're not going to see any of those bumps. Every single one of my caps has this, and the reason is you have to ease it in over a curve. So it's a straight line, 2-inch wide band that you're easing over the curve of the pattern, which then creates this bump effect, which once I sew it together, like I said, you will not see that. Okay, so I'm all pinned. Look at that. Ta-da! Okay. Pull one of my strings out. So this whole thing down here is going to be hand sewn, but see these little threads that are part of the, it's just the linen that's shredded from that gather. I'm going to stick my needle up in there where I want to tuck the knot under. Okay, so I'm going to grab a little bit of that fabric and I'm going to put my thimble on because that really stung. Okay, so push that in, pull it tight. Okay, so that's going to hide that right here. Now what I do is I come back, oops, so that's kind of what happens, is that knot sometimes isn't pushed further in, so you have to make sure it goes all the way in. And I'm going to come this way towards myself for a stitch where I've gone through all the layers of the fabric, and now I'm going to catch it again and go forward. Okay, now the stitching on this you do not want to show on the front. So you're doing a whip stitch where you're grabbing the fabric. See this machine line stitching right here? Can you see that? So the machine stitching, I'm trying to, it's right here, okay? This is the fold. I want to grab the fabric right at that same line of the machine stitching and pull it through. This gives you a good foundation for your stitches. It's not going to come undone. It also hides the stitching from the front. You're not going to see it from the front. So if I turn it over, you don't see it. See that? See that you don't see? I really like in this video you can see the difference between the fabric of the band and the fabric of the cap. I kind of hoped that would happen. It's just a slightly different linen, different weave of linen, a little bit looser weave. I did that on purpose because I wanted you to see in the video a little clearly, and white on white is kind of tricky to show. Okay, so I'm not worried about gathering or holding my gather together because that's been securely stitched with the machine. And I'm just really doing 1/4 of an inch, maybe, whip stitch. You see how quickly this goes? I mean, from the beginning of cutting out the fabric of the pattern, not creating the pattern, that's a whole different bag of worms, but from cutting out the pattern to completing the basic cap, if I weren't doing this as an instruction, and if I weren't stopping and fixing things and adjusting the camera, you can get a cap made in an hour. I mean, it's really not that complex. If you were working on the sewing machine, it goes even faster. One what I call a down and dirty St. Brigida cap. And honestly, the only parts that really show of your cap, unless you wear it by itself, is the front embroidery part under your veil. So most of the time, you can do the whole thing on the sewing machine if you want to. You do not have to hand stitch this. I am hand stitching this because this is actually a foundation garment for a gift that I'm giving someone. So, okay, so look here, see the ripple? See, that's a little extra fabric. You're just gonna loosen it up a little bit, tack, bring it towards you a little bit, tack, and bring it towards you a little bit, and tack. It's easing in the fabric. They do this a lot with, or you do it a lot when you put in sleeves, or you're easing in a bodice front that's curved. It's basic geometry, basic laws of the world. I mean, if you take a straight line object and try to put it in a curved one, you have to ease in the fabric to make it fit right. Even a modern pattern will talk about easing in the armsy, etc. of those patterns, or of those pieces. Okay, so I'm going to continue along here. I am going to videotape another little section here of some embroidery when I get to that, because I want to show you how to prep the cap for embroidery, just so that you see a little bit of some of how I do that. But I'm just going to stitch along here, and I will come back in the next part and show you how to do that. See you in a few.